Can electricity travel through wood? It was actually a really good question that was asked to me recently. Can electricity travel through wood? And it was asked because this person had noticed that there are trees that during, a lightning storm, like boom, you see a tree like split in half, charred because it got hit by lightning. And this person was like, if that's the case, like it means it is a conductive thing, right? Sort of, yeah. Anything that will allow current to flow through it is conducting electricity. However, wood, because of how it's made, it's a compound of a lot of different things. There's no like element of wood that you can, like zoom in and get one little wood. It's made of a whole bunch of different things, but kind of one thing that's in common with a lot of woods, most wood, is that the chemical structure of it really doesn't allow current to flow very well. So by and large, we consider this an insulator, but that can be put to a test and become false. So if we were to take a large enough voltage and apply current over this, we could make this a load. We could essentially turn it into a load, like a light bulb. We can make electricity flow through it and things happen. Case in point, there's something out there called fractal wood burning. And fractal wood burning is kind of like an art form, but essentially it's somebody that takes a high amount of voltage. Usually they take like 120 volts, they put a step-up transformer, cram 120 volts into it, turn that into 2,000 volts or 9,000 volts or whatever. The higher voltage, the better, because you can get over a longer distance with the higher voltage. And it's a little bit more impressive because there's just more power applied. But anyways, fractal wood burning is essentially where you put a probe into one side of wood and you put a probe into another side. You run it straight off of a transformer, and once you apply power, the current like spiders through from one probe to the other probe. So it just shows that this can become a conductor. It's just not a very good insulator, but it is amongst insulators. And another, you see a huge tree out in the middle of the country that got hit by lightning, or you see houses that, get hit by lightning. All kinds of stuff happens. So wood, there is certain elements that happen that make it a little bit more conductive. Generally, it's not very conductive, but a lot of times when wood is wet, all of a sudden, water is a very good conductor of electricity. So if you add and saturate this thing with water, it becomes a lot better, a lot more conductive. So in storms, it's essentially like a huge conducting rod, a tree sticking up out of the earth. It becomes a conducting rod. So it hits poles, it hits trees all the time. So that's just a very quick overview. Yes, the answer is it is an insulator, but it can be a conductor because it's just not a very good insulator. And here's why. All right, so here, let's say that we've got an atom, and we're going to say that this is the nucleus. It's got a net positive charge because you've got all these protons and neutrons inside. But out here, you've got all of these electrons, which are negative. And say we've got, 3. So if we have a outer electron shell or a valence shell that has essentially more than half but less than 8. So every valence shell of every single atom, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So say this shell is full, we've got 8, and then we've got a couple out here. If you have less, 1 or 2 basically electrons in your outer shell, that's going to be a really good conductor of electricity, because if any energy is applied to this valence layer, it's easy to kick one of these out because there's just not very much holding it in place. So any compounds or elements that only have 1 electron in their outer shell are actually the best conductors. 2 is second best, but once you start to climb, say you've got 3 or 4, now what happens is you've got something of a situation where it could gain or it could lose, but it's really difficult for both. So this starts to become an insulator. And if you have more than 4, so now we've got 5, but we've got less than 8, it becomes a much better insulator. So wood is generally, there is no, wood does not equal an element. Oops, sorry, my fat finger's in the way. There is no element of wood. Wood is a compound. So basically wood is made of a whole bunch of different types of elements. There's some different wood, some different wood. But there's no like base element wood. So wood itself is made up of a bunch of different constituents, but by and large, most types of wood have more than 4 and less than 8 electrons in their outer shell, which makes them an insulator, but just not a very good one. A really good insulator is probably going to have 7. So, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, meaning that it can take an electron in, but once it takes it in, it's going to be full. It's going to be what we call chemically stable. So it's got a full shell. So anything that's got a full valence layer of electrons in the atom that has that is so stable that basically you can't do anything with it in chemistry. It's not going to lose charge. It's not going to gain charge. It's hard to ionize. It's just hard to do anything. A lot of them won't even build up with other atoms to become compounds because they already have a full, stable outer shell of valence electrons. So that's why anything that's above 4 but less than 8. If it has 8, you can't really do anything with it. If it has less than 4, it's actually becoming a conductor. And if it's anywhere above 4 or less than 8, then you're going to be an insulator. So that is why wood is typically seen as an insulator, but you can still send current through it because it might only have 5 electrons in the outer shell. So you could potentially loosen electrons up from the outer layer and allow current to flow just very, very poorly. But if you send enough current at a high enough voltage through it, you can still influence and move those electrons. Now, something that is not a good conductor is rubber, like these boots. By the way, boots, ARIAT's doing a sale. If you guys want to get some ARIATs, there's a link in the description below. This sucks to sit like this, by the way. Oh my God, I'm getting old. So I love these boots. These are the boots that I have been wearing probably the last month. But they're rubber. They're electrically non-conductive. They're electrically insulated. They are carbon-toed, which is carbon fiber essentially. So there's no metal inside of here. If you start ripping the toe up, you're not gonna have all this metal hanging out. I always say electricians, we need to not wear steel toes, always wear composite. That's just my personal preference. But these boots are awesome. They're super comfy. They're super stout. I like lace-ups. Anyways, thank you so much, ARIAT, for sponsoring this. If any of you guys are interested, holy crap. There's a link in the description below. They're going to hook anybody up in my audience with a 10% discount. You just got to put the little put the little code into the interwebs when you follow the link. There's a link below. But right now they're actually doing a 25% off thing for the rest of the month. There's a promo going on. So seriously, you can get a good deal on a good set of boots. I thought this was a good graphic that would help explain. So this is electricity 1 through 7. It's got this graphic here, but it basically shows that any energy that is applied to a valence shell, to an outer layer of an atom, it's distributed amongst all of the valence electrons equally. It's not just applied to 1 or 2, but the more electrons that you have, the more stable it is. So it's really difficult to dislodge one of them when you've got all 4 of them taking kind of an equal burden or an equal load. So it says right here, 4 electrons share the energy equally, but each has less energy gained than any electron above. So imagine if you had 7 in here and you apply an energy, or you apply some kind of energy to this outer shell. There's so many electrons in there. Everything's so stable that it's not just going to pop one out. Everything, it's kind of like a sponge, and it can carry that load very, very easily because it has so many electrons to kind of bear that load. But in something like this, where say we only have 1 and you apply energy, well, it's really easy. At a certain point, you put enough energy behind this, and it's going to eject that out because there's just nothing strong holding it. Then it goes back to its more stable form on a lower shell. So electrons are always being excited, and that's how they're able to be ejected, or that's how they're able to either accept or repel an electron. The reason for me drawing all of that and talking about the electrons is just to say that Electric current, rather, is essentially the movement of electrons. We monitor the shaking back and forth in an alternating current. In a direct current, it is the electrons moving in one solid direction, but for the electrons to move, they have to be very few in the outer valence shell so that they can be ejected from one to the next, to the next, to the next to make that current happen. If you have something like this that is more of an insulator than it is a conductor, it's very hard to get those electrons to move. That is why this is like that. But it's not a killer, awesome insulator. It's kind of a crappy one. So there's a lot of electrons in the outer shell already, so it's pretty difficult to pop any electrons out of that shell to get any current to move through it. But you can if you got a really strong force. So really the answer is yes, electricity can flow through wood. You can make wood conductive. Wood is generally an insulator, but just not a very good one. So there are situations that you could make this a conductor. So I hope that helps. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any other questions. Love you crazy people, and I will see you in the next episode.